All right. Hello, everyone. Here I am with a mate of mine, Gary Knight. Now, I met Gary online a number of years ago and had a drink with him in London, with Guinness to be precise, somewhere in East London, I think it was. I don't even know, 4 years ago or something. But
I think we're in Clapham,
was it Clapham? Yeah, that's right.
Clapham Common.
Yeah. And you were living in London at the time, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And then as time has gone on, we've just stayed in touch. And I think there's been some different ventures that you've kind of always been tinkering around or playing with different types of creative futures for yourself. And you're back in
Too many.
Australia now.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, but back in the home country, but in a different city to what I've grown up in, I guess. But yeah, so in Perth in Western Australia now. So it was like coming home, but coming home to somewhere new, if that made sense.
How long were you out of the country?
I was only in London for those 2 years, so I'd basically hopped out of the mines. I was in Mount Isa for years, which is like a remote mining town in far north Queensland, and moved to the big city of London, which was like quite the quite the adventure. I'd never seen so many people crammed into such a tiny space, except for maybe a few visits to Asia and places like that. But yeah, it was definitely a bit different coming out of the desert going to London, but it was very, very fun. And then I've come back to Western Australia, which I'd never been to before, but I'm in Perth now, and Perth's a pretty laid back, cruisy city. It feels more like a big town than it does a city, but yeah, it's nice. Got everything you need.
Yeah, cool. Lovely. Now, I'm going to ask you how you would introduce yourself. Like I would introduce you as as a bodybuilder, as a physique expert, personal trainer, and someone who's also a music enthusiast, and yeah, kind of a creative thinker. You like to delve into logic and kind of critical thinking and how to construct kind of decent arguments, and yeah, someone who's just kind of engaged with the creative process and and I guess there's an individualist streak in there as well, like how to create self-reliance for yourself, and maybe that sort of ties all of those things in together in some way, being strong of mind, strong of body, and also having fun and yeah, diving into music and making it all worthwhile in the mix of it all. So yeah, anything to add to that? Like,
I don't know. I mean, obviously when we met, I think I would have at that time would have had a much more defined identity, I guess. So I'd always been someone who's interested in lots of different things. I'm always dabbling with different things, but at that time, I'd basically come off a few years where I'd had a pretty good online presence with sort of muscle building stuff. Run my own YouTube channel, was making videos, filming them myself, editing that kind of stuff. And then I'd gone to London, and basically it was, work in a pub for next to nothing, or maybe have a crack at PT and see if I could turn this into a like on the floor business. And so when we met, basically I was in the full swing of running that business. So I would say my identity had crystallized pretty firmly around that idea of, bodybuilding, physique stuff, building muscle, and fitness entrepreneurship, I guess, and fitness business. But probably like anything in my life, I'm always at flux. So there's always some new hobby that I'm dabbling in. So I guess how we've met, I think we were discussing a lot about big ideas and politics and things like that at the time through those kind of groups, those kind of channels. So I've always been into my politics, my history, my philosophy, those things in a big way. And that would probably very strongly summarize my 20s, but probably since 30 and on, it's definitely been about producing things. So I'm still training, doing all that, but that's on the back burner a little bit. Writing a book on that topic, but as far as like having an online presence, it's all quiet on the Western Front. So yeah, if I was to define myself now, I'm trying to design and build guitars. So that's a bit of an aggressive pivot from being a fitness entrepreneur, I guess. But I've always played guitar since I was very young. I've played multiple instruments. I'm always playing around with sound. So it made sense once I sort of got my first little guitar kit from the internet and polished it up and painted it and did all that. I was like, oh, okay, well, this is very interesting. And like anything that takes your fancy, you sort of go down a deep rabbit hole of frustration and creative pursuit, which is mostly fixing errors and cursing the heavens for how you made this new creative error and then fixing it again. So right now I'm wearing the guitar designer hat is the best way to put it. So even today I purchased a CNC router, which is basically like a computer controlled router with a sort of XYZ axis, and you'll feed in a design and it'll carve the wood out for you. So that's the next thing I'm going to try and learn. I've got no idea really what I've bitten off, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. So let's say budding guitar designer, and I have a design that's almost built. So it'll be my first original design. So that's the current hat I'm wearing.
Yeah, I love that. Let's sort of stay on that for a second. And the way you kind of built up to that was around the sense of the question of identity. And so how does that play its part for you, and kind of what value does having an identity lend to the actual process, like being in the process? Is that just used to describe it to someone else, or do you feel like actually by embodying that and saying, oh, I'm a budding guitar designer?
I think you have to own it, and I think you have to own it. I wouldn't say fake it before you make it, but at some point you have to have enough presence and enough ego to say, yes, I can design an instrument. Yes, I can design a creative, unique, innovative instrument that I believe can occupy space in the market. And I would like to test that assumption. I would like to see if I can birth that identity out into the world, sort of thing. So at some point, obviously these things start as a little sort of percolation in the brain where you're like, I'll get this guitar and I'll paint it. And then you knock up your first one and you go, oh, that's mine. That's me. Look what I've created, and then it sort of sets the ball in motion. And then at some point you do a few more of them, then you try and make something original. In my case, I've basically drawn something on the computer and got a guy to put it together for me, and just gone back and forth with that process, figuring out woods and construction and what it's all going to look like. And at some point at the end of all of that, you see it start to come together, and it's not far off. Of just waiting on a bit of hardware to arrive so my luthier can put it together. And at some point you go, well, that came out of my brain. Someone with some talent joined the team and helped me realize it and bring it to life. And then essentially you've designed a guitar. So that makes you a guitar designer. And it might suck if that's other people's opinions, but from what I've seen so far, it's very, very beautiful, and it'll definitely stir some thoughts, I think, in terms of a possible viable business, but one step at a time.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And to get a kind of history on this project or this idea, like when did the first time this notion of, oh, I could maybe design a guitar, and even if that was first written off immediately, like, sometimes these ideas hang around since we were 20 and they stick around for a decade, and then all of a sudden we decide, oh, actually I could do that. What's really stopping me? So yeah, what would you say to that as far as this specific idea? And maybe it came easily.
Well, I think it was about 12 months ago. Actually, it might have been less, maybe like 8 or 9 months ago. I think I bought my first kit, and I'm not even sure where I saw it. Like, I think some of one of my friends from back in the mining days, he buys a lot of guitars, so he's always sending me the new guitar he's bought and showing it off. And I've bought some pretty guitars over the years, so I've always been sort of aesthetically concerned with what an instrument might look like. And then I just sort of kept looking at different brands, and there was a few sort of innovative designs popping by, and I think, you know, the algorithm of social media starts to kind of like hack your mind. So all of a sudden you're on Instagram, you've looked up a pretty guitar, and then now you see guitar after guitar after guitar after guitar, and then you're basically like brainwashed, and then you kind of like, oh, I reckon I could make that better. You know, this would improve it. It should look like this, or that's really ugly. I can't believe a major brand makes money selling this instrument. Why are there people with such bad taste? Et cetera, et cetera. So at some point you're sort of like challenging what you see, if that makes sense. You're seeing things, and I think if you're creative, I think you often have, I'm going to say, like a high disgust for something that's wrong. So if you ever watch an interview with someone like Joni Ives, who was the famous industrial designer behind all of the Apple stuff, you know, he designed those original Apples that had the, you know, like the clear acrylic, you know, back in the sort of late 90s, early 2000s, those like colored acrylic ones. And then that kicked off with the iPod, iMac, all of that stuff. He was behind all of those things. So when you watch him in interviews, like, he's highly critical of all their products. Like he will like dress down iPhone after iPhone, even though he was responsible for them. So I think a big part of it is like seeing a space and kind of going, no, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. It should be this, 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 and this. So you have to kind of have a kind of a judgmental eye, like you're looking at it in a discerning manner and seeing if it's beautiful and why, and if it's not beautiful, why not? How would you fix it? And then at some point, you can't just like sit there being a consumer and going, I'll get that one and not that one. You go, imagine this one. And then you have to make it because it's in your mind. All the improvements are in your mind, and it can't exist unless you put the rubber to the road sort of thing and make it happen. So I think for me, I've always been pretty snobbish, I guess, when it comes to aesthetic things, even when it comes to like fashion and architecture, anything that's almost aesthetic. I'm looking at it kind of judgmentally. And so I think at some point you can't just be like a little curmudgeon being a critic in the corner. You have to kind of like go test your taste in things by bringing something to the market. So I think a big part of that was just, I was looking at guitars, seeing things I didn't like, things I really loved, things that I thought I could do better or tweak, and then sort of just bought guitar kits because I was like, I want to make a guitar, but you don't start by just, you know, chopping wood up. You start by getting a simple kit off online and doing all the processes so you can learn, you know, how are these things like handled, how are they painted, how are they clear coated, how are they buffed out. And it's amazing what you learn, and it's amazing how many ways you can get something wrong. So most of it is literally just like fixing mistakes, but all of that stuff's like super invaluable. And so when it came to, say, finally getting my original design done, I realized that I was probably a year and a half to 2 years away from even having the skills to do something like that. And that's if everything went well. So I always kind of think of that saying, entrepreneurship. So I don't necessarily want to be a guitar luthier, which is someone who builds instruments. I want to design beautiful instruments and have them exist and have a way for people to buy them. So I basically got chatting to a guy in one of the guitar building forums. He happened to be from the Philippines. So I took advantage, I guess, of the arbitrage between our currency and their currency. So he could make a lot of money for him, but I could save a lot of money for me. And then I could knock out my first prototype that way. So that's kind of how I went about knocking out the first design.
Right. And did doing it that way speed up the process? You mentioned kind of looking at the forecast of 2 years. Is that?
Yeah, like absolutely. And you have to make that decision at some point. Like a lot of people, I think, in the luthier world, they're those classic guys that, you know, they might be the guy that works on their car all day. And even though it's probably easier to be good at their job and pay a mechanic to fix things, they love to tinker on their car. And guys that build instruments in their shed, even if they do it sort of semi-professionally, they're guys that love to work with wood. They want to be hands-on. They want to be doing everything themselves. Whereas I've always looked at it as far as like, I just want to show you and be like, yeah, that's out of my head. I don't really care whether I did it all. That doesn't really interest me. And actually, after doing a few kits, the amount of labor that's required, the amount of things that can go wrong, it just made a lot more sense to specialize in what it is you're trying to achieve. So I basically realized pretty early on that not only would it cost a lot of time, it'll cost a lot of equipment, and I'll eventually have a workshop because I intend to prototype designs. So that's why I'm getting that CNC router, and I'll need to buy a fair few other things to realize that. But part of using a robot instead of extra machines or too much labor is because, I can actually pay someone to turn my sketch into a 3D render. I can pay someone to turn that 3D render into code for the router, and then set it up, and it can do all the work and make this marvelous shape without me having to learn 100 hours of skills. So it's about hacking and cheating your way through the design process, so that you achieve what you want to achieve.
Yeah, brilliant. I want to kind of stay on this bit and take it back to what you were saying earlier around taste and judgment, and tie that into being willing to embrace the part of it which you do like and that you feel passionate about, and then be willing to also sort of excuse yourself from the rest of the process. I know that, personally, especially from this avenue of being self-reliant, like there can be this feeling that I need to learn to do everything, as though, and part of that can be an ego thing. And then you can be in this back and forth of kind of wasting energy around not giving yourself permission to either make that judgment and to say, that's an ugly building, and not just say that, but I'm going to do something about it by, offering a suggestion or a design of how it might be different. So maybe you could speak to kind of the emotional journey that you went on from saying that actually from being a creator that you had something to say, and not only making a critique, but being able to say that critique is valuable, at least it is to me. And that can, I can go on a journey with myself, with my impression of the world, with my perspective. And that may be valuable to other people. It may, or it may not be, but like without looking for that validation, that I think creativity is so often that journey to like give ourselves permission to exist, to have impressions, to have a perspective, to own it. And yet it's all very easy to hear that that's the way. And yet so often that's the thing, that's the bit that stops us actually starting the process.
I would say I was born this way. Like I've always been very quick to have an opinion, and I wouldn't say like rash about an opinion. Like I don't just sort of hate things or like things without any kind of consideration. But I think I've always had a good eye for aesthetics. I've always had a good eye for like, fashion choices. Like I could take my wife shopping and I could dress her like, it would just, I could always do things like that. And I think the same goes for just choosing, quality products in my life. Like I'm a massive Apple fanboy, which I know a lot of people find cringe, but one of the things about Apple is that their industrial design is near flawless in terms of the aesthetic. So the entire product range is just so sorted, it's so organized, it's all this one continuous language that they sort of riff on over the years, and it's made them one of the top companies. And it is all design did all of that. It had nothing to do with specs, while the entire sort of, I guess, Android or non-Apple ecosystem has lagged on that matter, and it's kind of cost them in some sense. It's always the tech nerds thinking about performance, cost ratios, and all those kind of things, but the end consumer just wants pretty status symbols that look good on the desk. And every architectural firm will be loaded up with iMacs and Macs because it looks pretty on their desk, and they're creative people, and that's how they see it. So I think at some level, like, I don't know if you can train to be like this. I think it's in your genes to kind of look at the world a certain way and be judgmental about it. I think, the average fella go into the shops to buy clothes, and it wouldn't be much more considerate than, these are t-shirts, these are pants. That they wouldn't think much deeper than that. Whereas I would be like, this outfit must be considered from head to toe, like the socks and the tie and the shoes and the belt, all of those things must speak to each other, and they must follow a theme and a pattern. And I've always been like that. I've always been picky. I've always been drawn to beautiful product design. I've always been drawn to things like architecture, especially architecture, actually. Like, if I had my time again, I wish I'd sort of learnt to draw and maybe gone down that path, because I'm forever watching documentaries on it and looking at Instagram feeds of architecture and watching grand designs endlessly. And, me and my partner, who's also quite creative in her way, we'll sort of sit there and discuss, if that's a good looking building or not, and think about, why that is. We've even sort of...
To pause there a second, Gary, like to rewind to whenever you were making professional choices, what were some of the things going through your mind about which direction you did want to take?
What do you mean by like professional choices, like work or...
Yeah,
or
I mean,
like...
just hearing you talk about architecture and, and drawing and that sort of thing, like
those
whether you
things have
viewed
always
things as a
been...
young guy differently from how you view them now. So, with the wisdom that you have
Yeah,
now, how things might have looked
yeah.
different.
I think, like, weirdly, it's in the blood. Like, my mother was an art teacher. Her mother was like a very, very gifted painter, like could just paint sort of Australian landscapes that would be comparable to anything I'd see in a National Gallery. But I never really touched drawing. I never really touched art or anything super creative like that when I was young. And I think not having learnt to draw in high school and not really taken art classes past the mandatory years where you have to take them, knocks you off that path at the end of the day. So if you're not drawing and then technically drawing and then doing a course at uni with architecture or design, you can never enter those fields. And it's sort of, you get busy working and living your life, and it's very, very hard to reset and get back into something. Like, you have to be very high conscientious, I think, to do something like architecture. So I think it's very easy to consume architecture, have opinions on it. It's much, much harder to bring those things to life. That's a very big, challenging career path. So I think I was never on course for it. My creative pursuits when I was young was all music based. So I just gravitated that way. So it was music over visuals. But I think as I got older, that more discerning eye, I think, just came into focus. And I'm not really sure why. Like, it just sort of slowly happened. Maybe from like my mid-20s and on, sort of went that way. I probably got into like fashion first, like when we were living in Mount Isa, the only kind of like social thing you could do there was go to the races. So all summer and spring, there were races every second weekend, and everyone would dress up and go to those things. So because my wife used to dress up and make an effort, I would dress up and make an effort. And then I would start to think about it a lot more, and we both start to think about it. So it was almost like a competition to kind of like see who could outdress who and outdress the other couples. And sort of, I've got so many like jackets and suits that just sit in the cupboard that I don't even like wear much anymore, because I'm not that social. But from that period of my life, I
Right.
definitely collected a collection of pretty things, I guess. So yeah, I think I just missed the boat. But in some ways, like, approaching these guitars, it's kind of like, it's like the low energy play at architecture. It's like, well, I can't do that. That's too big a challenge to get across now. So I'm going to like design something smaller that's more doable. So I think after I'd put those kits together and made something that was quite pretty, I was sort of like, this can be done. I can achieve this. I can't build a building per se. But having said that, we have designed a house that we're going to build in the future on the block of land we have. So I have designed my own house, and it's actually very, very beautiful. And I built it out of cardboard because I can't draw. So I physically made the shapes with cardboard. And then my wife did the floor plan, and we took it to a designer and said, knock this up, and knocked it up, and it's quite pretty too. So I can do it in a very crude way, and then I get the people I need to assist me to finish it off, which, interesting enough, as an aside, I might add, I'm a big fan of an architect called John Lautner. So John Lautner was a mid-century modern architect. He's famous for the chemosphere, which is that kind of UFO type building in California, as well as I think the Elrond house, which was in one of the Bond movies. And there's the Goldstein Sheet building, which is this very famous building up in the hills of Hollywood. That's sort of like, it's all these like concrete angles and big glass sheets and built-in furniture. And so John Lautner, he used to run this architectural firm, and he wasn't even a very good drawer. And he used to just make these really crude sketches, and then he'd basically give them to the team and basically be like, change that, change that, change that. And he wouldn't really do any of like the technical stuff. He would have people who were the best drawers and the best technical drawers to bring everything to fruition. But most of it was just, he had this idea of this shape that would, speak, or a crude shape that would come out of the land and sit on the property that he was commissioned to build on. And then he would assemble the team around him to make it happen. So I often think about the fact that, one of my favorite architects, who I believe has built some of the most beautiful like homes, so not like big public buildings, but more just like glamorous B-grade celebrity homes in Hollywood in the 50s and 60s. He was very much like that. It was just like a crude, rough sketch, an impression, a strong fundamental shape that would work. And then he would use a team to kind of like fill in the details as he went. So I often think, don't let a lack of technical skill stop you in your creative process. Just solve the problem as you go. Another good example like that might be like Kanye West. So Kanye West is a creative genius. He is as good as he says he is. And no one believes for a second that Kanye West can sit down at the piano and play and sing like Lady Gaga. He is not a musician in that sense, but he can assemble a team, and he can rough out and sketch his ideas with software helping him to produce very complicated drum patterns that are some of the best in the world, that have made some of the top hits in the world, have underpinned a lot of the great hip hop stars of the world. And he couldn't sit there at any single instrument and impress you, but he can make an end product and he can ship it. So it's kind of interesting to me that some people in the creative space are really good at organizing the energy around them and the talent around them to have a vision brought into the world, but not really be good at any of it. They're just can like direct the world around them and push the world around them. Steve Jobs and Wozniak, Steve Jobs he was just a like disagreeable dude that wanted things to be stubbornly his way, do things faster, quicker, simpler, and more beautifully. And he would basically bark at the team until the engineers and the designers fell into line and achieved his mission. But he couldn't sit there and sketch out any of the products for which he's birthed in the world. He just was good enough to describe them to the right person and went back and forth with that person to make it happen. And then now it exists.
What do you feel is necessary at that play when you don't have the competence, if you like, to have the confidence in delivering the vision? What do you think is at play there?
Well, I mean, a lot of this is just technical. Like, if you can't draw, you can't draw. But if you can see something that you think is beautiful in your mind, how do you get it out? So for me, I can usually sketch things, like I'll cheat, like the guitar I designed a few weeks ago that's getting built at the moment. Like I basically, so I use fiber. You know how fiber is one of those like service-based things where basically you get people overseas with technical skills to plumb things up for cheap. So I got him to make a line drawing of a guitar that I like the neck and bridge configurations of, and I got him to turn that picture into a line diagram, and then I got him to delete the outside of the body, and I kept the neck and the pickups and the bridge, which is the core part of the guitar. And then I basically put that in a free program. I think it's called Graphic or something like that on the Mac. And then it's got like, you can put a grid behind it and you can snap the lines to the grid. And then I just snapped the lines around the guitar neck and played around with them until it made sense to me. So none of that was technically proficient, but it was good enough that my luthier was able to grab it and go, okay, well, we know what that model of guitar is. We know what the measurements and the scale length and all of those critical parts of the instrument are because it's copied off an existing guitar. The outside body's new and exotic. Haven't really seen anything like that, but all he did was print it out on a couple of pieces of paper, stick it together and sketch it out on some wood, make a template. And then all of a sudden it comes together from there. So that kid, and he's only an 18-year-old, he was able to take a very, very basic sketch. I mean, it wasn't a terrible sketch at all. Everything was tight. The lines were good. The dimensions were good. But, you know, this was like the first time I'd ever used that program to knock up my first ever original design. And judging from the photos that have come out of what he's done so far, it's beautiful. It is literally beautiful. And it comes from nothing more than me taking a punt on what I see in my mind is beautiful. This is the best I can communicate it to him. And he has the necessary technical skills, plus some creative abilities of his own to see it come to life. So it's just kind of solving the problem as best you can. At the end of the day, like if you want to do something, cheat, hack, steal, borrow, do whatever you got to do to like push it across the line. And like I said, I'd made that commitment that I'd rather make a product than be able to be like, oh, look what I made in my shed, guys. Like this took me 10,000 hours, like to get enough skill to do this. Like I'm going to turn around a beautiful guitar in a matter of months because I just dropped, I guess, that romanticism about it and put on the entrepreneur hat and the designer hat, and then hired someone else to do the technical solving for me. So, and took advantage of currency arbitrage, which I think is the main thing, because if you're trying to build guitar prototypes and use someone in a Western country, you know, it'll be anything probably for what I've got and the woods that are in this thing. The woods are exotic and very hard to get, even in the Philippines, let alone get them to Australia. It'd probably be a $5,000 or $6,000 prototype, but I'm going to get it for like, you know, probably under 2K all up, you know, which is pretty good. So
is that US or Australian?
Australian,
Okay.
Australian. So US, that would probably be like maybe $1,600, $1,500, something like that. But to make profit on a guitar, like you would really need to sell it for like 3,000 to 4,000 US, and that's still quite up there in a very saturated market with a lot of quality, affordable options competing. But I went for a very radical design with very like high-end features that would put it in a tier of instrument that's pretty special, or something you might only get if it was a custom build. Because that's the only way to access the market. So kind of thinking of like the Tesla strategy, where they released like the supercar version of the Tesla first because they knew the early adopters would pay high money for it. They didn't try to come out with like a sedan or anything sort of first, you know. You could imagine if I tried to like, and a lot of guitar builders that, you know, are semi-pro and trying to enter the market, you know, they make copies of Telecasters and Strats, which are like, you can get the actual Fender Strat in Mexico for, you know, $800 US, and it's like semi-official. You can get a proper American standard for maybe like $1,400. It's like, why are they going to buy your copy of it, you know, just because you made it more expensively in your shed? and it's probably not even as spec as what comes out of the factory in America. So for me, I was kind of thinking, make something very weird and strange but beautiful, because you don't have a chance unless the design is so out of this world that it attracts attention. It essentially needs to be guitar porn on Instagram. It needs to be like, whoa, what is this? This is awesome. This is crazy. I've never seen this. What you might call a purple cow, if you're familiar with Seth Godin.
Yeah.
Make something that stands out, because it'll spread through word of mouth.
Great. Yeah, and I love the way that you've talked about this whole process, and there's, beyond the currency, there's so many things that you're leveraging that wouldn't have been possible 20 years ago, and there's kind of access to Fiverr, the different types of programs, the fact that you've got this new CAD machine coming, and that there's this kind of remote way where you can really like leverage the skills of so many other people in a really affordable way. And so creativity is just kind of exploded, where you don't have to have a huge employment staff, because you can kind of work with people and collaborate in this sort of distributed way on a kind of project by project basis. Talking about, you mentioned earlier about dressing, you in kind of dressing up against your wife almost, or against the other couples. And then, in this, we're kind of touching on cooperation and collaboration. So just, speak a little bit about how you view competition and cooperation in the creative process. Like how much compromise has maybe been made along the way, perhaps on the cooperation, if that's even a feature. But yeah, just those two pieces of the puzzle.
I'm about to drop a meme. Apes together strong. It's that simple. So I'm not going to take on a process or an endeavor by myself, because not only do I not have enough skills, I don't have enough time. So at the moment, like with my working arrangement, I work away for 4 weeks. So I literally do, at the moment, 28 12-hour night shifts in a row. There's not a lot of time in the day to organize much. So when I'm talking to, say, my luthier mate that's plumbing the guitar up for me, it's like, I've got 20 minutes in the day probably to shoot some messages and make some decisions back and forth with him if I have internet access, which at the moment I've been working very remote and I often don't have internet access. And when I need to get things done, I'm home for 2 weeks before I shoot off again. So I'm living my life in little sprints. So at the end of the day, like I don't have consistent weekend, where I can tinker, move things forward. I've got this 2-week block where I have to get a whole lot of things done. And so you learn pretty quickly that you're not going to have time to bring any of this thing of your vision into play unless you leverage time and money. So my job allows me to make money. It gives me good blocks of time off when I'm home. So I have to basically seize that. So getting this guy to build a guitar for me, and we'll eventually have a proper business arrangement once the prototyping's kind of like worked out. But it just allows things to move forward while I'm working hard and making money. That money is feeding this kid while he builds me a guitar. So it's essentially a case of I don't even really have a choice. Like I just take the most expedient path in front of me. If I want to bring this thing to fruition, at this stage, it's cheaper for me to pay someone to do it, because the time cost and the cost of setting up equipment here and learning how to use it properly, it would stretch out this thing until I ran out of energy and stopped. So at the end of the day, I'm working very hard and I'm good at getting money. And so I'm just putting that money to go to work to make sure the things I want to happen. So I just see it like that. It's just solve the problem as best you can in the situation you have. But funnily, now that I think about it, like if anyone said to me, oh, they'd just gotten into making guitars and they want to start a guitar business, like I would have this conversation with them and be like, do you want to build guitars because you physically love to work with wood and be hands-on and be like a laborer and laboring over these designs of yours? Or do you want to make products that are successful in the market? And do you think this is the best use of your time? I think at the end of the day, like, I have to I'm wearing the designer cap, and I think I always will, because I think I have good instincts for that. Say in some fantasy version of the future where I have a fledgling business that's turning over good money and I am hiring designers, I still think I would be more likely to hire someone to be CEO, to manage costs and accounting and business and plant decisions, and I would be head of design. I would want that, because I think looking at things like Apple and anything in the product space, it is all about beauty and status. Like, at the end of the day, like, someone puts a guitar on their body, it's no different to you having an iPhone or having, you know, the famous earbuds that everyone's wearing now. If you don't get that right, you're dead in the water, because it's a brutal market, and I'll most likely fail. It's going to be incredibly hard to have a win, but I can only have a win if I can create something truly remarkable, truly beautiful. That's the only way I could enter this market. So I don't see any point to me focusing on build quality when there's guys that can build better than me. They're ready to go, and they're not business savvy. They're not design savvy. That's not their strengths. Their strengths are the technical problems, shaping things, sanding things, coding them, buffing them out. There's people with those skills, and they're already there. They're years ahead of me, and they've proven that they have a passion for them. So I just need to energize them with capital and an idea, and what I want can come to fruition. So I'm really just doing whatever I have to do to move forward. I don't have a lot of time, but I've got excess capital. So I'm just putting it to work and taking a punt.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I know that you're kind of a creative person. The whole time I've known you, you've been always working on something in a way. But this project specifically seems to have ignited something a little differently to, you know, music stuff that we've gone back and forth on. So what's been the difference in the kind of quality of your life, if you like, while you've had this running in the background? Like, how has this cast a different light on everything else that's going on? Maybe that's in the relationship, maybe that's even at work. You know, when do some of the creative ideas enter? You know, because I think there can be an amazing addition to our life when we've got a creative project burning. And yeah, so if you could just speak to that a bit, I think it would be interesting.
I think if you're creative, you don't really have a choice. If you don't do it, you die inside. It's really that simple. Like, you'll get very, very low energy in the world if you have these ideas that you think you can pull off and you don't do anything about them. Because otherwise all you do is work. And I'm kind of at that stage where there's not really much I need to buy. Like, I've got heaps of guitars and synths in my house. Like, there's not much left that entertains me. I'm not like a drinker or smoker or drug taker or anything like that. So, you know, I'm not, I need something to entertain me. So yeah, I work out and go to the gym, and that's fascinating, but I've kind of like tapped out on everything I can do with that, with the exception of I do have a book in the pipeline that's really just to cap off that period of my life, just to put all my thoughts into the world on that. And that keeps me going in terms of I don't know if that's creative output. It honestly feels more like I'm writing about science, like it's like a technical thing to communicate. It's kind of almost very, very formal. I've had to sort of do a lot of research and put everything together properly. But when it comes to just creativity, like nothing feels better than when you make something pretty or make a good aesthetic choice. And just kind of like exert your influence on the world. I think if you're creative, you have to do that. I think a good way I can maybe illustrate that is, like, I barely can play any song on any of the multiple instruments I can play. So like, if people say, you know, play me a top 40 hit, like, I can barely recall a riff from a top 40 hit. Like, I don't think I've ever really properly sat down to learn a complete song, because the second I could kind of get my way around the fretboard of the guitar, And I had a good teacher who taught me a lot about sort of scales and modes, and gave me the bare bone tools you might need to compose music. And the second I could get my head around that and move my fingers proficiently, I would generate my own ideas. And it was like that from 14 or 15 years of age. You could not force me to sit down and learn a song. I would just make up my own stuff. Every time I sit down at the piano, every time I sit down at the guitar, I'm just freestyling. I'm just playing things that like I want to hear my voice, my expression. I just want to improvise. And I'm not like a particularly accomplished musician. Like I did good in school. Like I came
I want to
first in my
jump in
music
actually.
class at school.
I want to jump in here with what you said. Like, I want to hear my voice. I want to hear my expression, and tie that in a bit with like bodybuilding, physique training. Like, in a way, that's something that can appear to be so much like just A to B, you know, do it like this. Something that's been almost, a lot of the groundwork has already been done. So in that field where it doesn't appear to be very creative, how, you know, what kind of, at what stage did you find that, oh, actually, I'm finding my own voice and my own expression in building muscle, in lifting heavy things? And I know that there's the book on the way that is kind of tying into sort of an element of that expression. But even in the training itself, I think that kicks in that point of where there's a trust of like, oh, actually, I noticed something else going on here that I'm not seeing articulated in the way other people are doing it. So how did it kind of come across in that, you know, in that form?
Yeah, I think like most people that build muscle, like they are trying to improve their aesthetic. You're a living sculpture in some sense. Probably my interest in being, you know, absolutely ripped and peeled and super aesthetic. You know, those days, I might bring them back. I might get back in proper good shape. I'm always very muscled, but I'm often not very peeled. But in my like 20s and mid 20s, especially, it was like very important to like be lean and in good shape and have the abs and the striations and all of that. And I think at some level, yeah, you are looking at your body artistically and you're making decisions to try and improve the quality of it. Some of that's in vain because, like, at the end of the day, if you pick enough exercises that cover the muscles of the body, for the most part, you take the shape that you're going to take. So there's not much more than getting bigger and stronger over time. But along the way, you kind of convince yourself that if I turn my pinky up this way, I'll get more shape on this thing. And if I use that attachment on the cable machine, my triceps the long head will magically develop and I'll get bigger on the bottom surface when you do a pose this way and that way. And I think everyone who's lifted in the gym at one stage thinks that they are like, you know, a sculptor who can just like put bits of clay over their body and make it look exactly how they want. But the fullness of time, it's really get stronger on basic movements and don't get, or keep yourself thin and lean, and you can show off what you have to better effect. But
how do you look at that? How do you look at those little tweaks? Not necessarily strictly in, you know, in bodybuilding, but you know, that process of feeling like, oh, I've got a little original thought if I twist my wrist like this, you know, and maybe in the big scheme of things, you realize you're actually just messing around with minutia. But in the week, you know, in the week to week, the day to day, it's that little bit of inspiration that can sometimes push you through that set, or, you know, get you through, even if it's just a bit of magical thinking. It's not really taking place, but
yeah, I think the magical thinking and the thought that you can have more control over the shape of your body than what's realistic is probably just an expression of the fact that you're into what you're doing. That's passion for what you're doing, sort of overflowing into magical thinking. So
yeah,
even though it's mostly sort of nonsense to some degree, it's like, you man, if you're passionate about it and you think this little hack's, you know, going to get you to where it's going to get you and it keeps you going, I think that's really cool. But I've been around the game long enough to know that sort of, I don't have big calves. It doesn't matter what I do. They don't get big. My wife has really big calves. She doesn't have to train them very much. They get big. It's just like it's
Yeah.
sometimes like that. But the rest of me seems to get pretty big pretty easily. But yeah, sometimes things are in vain. Often, like with training, it's noise and signal, and the training method is sometimes noise, and the signals your DNA. So sometimes your genes just express themselves in the inevitable way they will when you apply weight training. But there's always a more optimized way, and there's always a better calculated way to train. I do believe that, but usually in the fullness of time, you'll take the path you're going to take as long as you're consistent, show up and do the work.
Yeah, cool. Just before we leave that topic, is there anything you want to say about your book, just to anyone who's kind of interested on that front?
Oh, I mean, I just hope I can get it finished. It's been very stop start. Basically, because I wrote most of it while I was at work, so I would literally work a 12 or 13-hour day, get back to a mining camp, eat dinner quickly, get the laptop out, and I'd write 2 pages, and I would do it like day after day after day after day. But we've been out on very remote jobs, staying in caravans and bunk beds, and it's just the time hasn't really been there, and sometimes the infrastructure is not there to fire up the laptop. But it's close. I would almost call it a manuscript. Like it's really really close. I think just this guitar thing just is like hit me like a thunderbolt. You know what I mean? So like no one can write the book for me, but someone can actually build the guitar for me. And a lot of that's why my focus and energy's gone one way is maybe because it's easier to leverage decisions when you can get other people to do the work. Unfortunately, the book requires just me and being disciplined about being disciplined, which can be hard when you have to map it over a pretty over the top kind of work life. There isn't many people my age working as hard as I'm working right now. So I just don't have the energy sometimes, but I don't want to make excuses either. I need to find a way to do both, which I'll try and sort as quick as I can. But like I said, my sort of passion and attention's gone this way because it was the path of least resistance. But I definitely will get that book done, because what I've got to say and how I've got to say it is it's not super novel, but it's never really been articulated the way I'm going to articulate it and put it all together, and it would help a lot of people, because I think at the end of the day, most young men at some stage get hyper focused about getting in shape and looking good, because it opens up a boon of benefits, not only to shaping your mental game, but people tend to treat you a lot better when you're in good shape. You have better access to higher quality partners and all sorts of things when you keep yourself physically healthy and in shape. So in a world where men, I think, have to be a lot more competitive than in the past, building muscle and looking good is going to become a more evergreen field than it's ever been before, especially with things like Instagram being so prevalent. The pressure, I think, to be in good shape for young men is there, and there will always be a demand for a solution to that problem. So I'm not quite an old man, but I'm seasoned, and I've got a lot of wisdom and answers for solving that particular problem. So I'll knock that on the head at some stage.
Yeah, great. There's actually, I want to stay here a little bit, because you mentioned about the mental game of training. And, I think that's interesting with any creative pursuit, because persistence is that key factor that takes us anywhere, really, if we want to succeed in anything. So, yeah, maybe speak a little bit to that, how the discipline of being in the gym and training muscles has benefited you in all these other projects.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back a bit earlier than that. So when I was a young kid, like I played a lot of sports. I was probably like, yeah, naturally gifted at pretty much any sport. Like I'd come from a good lineage of athletic people. My grandfather was like a professional rugby league player. His cousin had played for Australia for rugby league. There's a few professional cricketers there in the line there somewhere as well. So I was always handed some gifts when it come to sport. And I'd always trained all through my childhood crazy hours. So I was up at the crack of dawn doing 2 hours of swimming training. I'd then train on paddle boards in the afternoon. That's when I was doing like surf lifesaving. So there's like, if you know what triathlon is, there's kind of like a beach variant of that called Ironman, where you do like swimming, running on the beach, kayaking, all that stuff. So I grew up training for all those kind of disciplines as a kid and playing a few other team sports and stuff. And so I was always doing something physical. It was just ingrained in me. So that ability to push, have discipline, the ability to hurt so that you could be competitively strong at a sport. I was trained as a kid, you know.
Yeah.
And so basically once I got to uni and it wasn't at the beach, and all those avenues of water sports that I normally train in kind of disappeared, there was basically the gym. And, you know, I took it up and I was a very fast responder. Like anything, if you take it up and you show some knack for it and you're good at it, then it's like, okay, well, positive feedback. And so you go down the rabbit hole. And then basically since I was 18, I haven't stopped training for more than, you know, a week at all. So I've just always shown up. I've always done the work. And for probably over a decade, I recorded everything I did. So I got right into it in a technical sense, like studied everything around it, applied everything in the gym, like I was running an experiment on myself. And you get to go very far with it. And when you think about it, like if you just apply that blueprint to anything else in your life, you'll go very, very far. But I don't think I've put time into anything else like I ever have the gym. And I think that might actually be a mistake that I'm trying to correct, because there's fields of pursuit that are far more lucrative and rewarding than just, you know, me pick up iron, me build muscle. Of course, like if I was good enough and disciplined enough and got on the steroids when I was younger to be like a competitive bodybuilding, then maybe that would have been a different avenue for me. But I don't think that was ever on the cards for me. But I mean, you could grab any guy in the gym and go like, look how much you train. Imagine if you put that much time into a side hustle, where would you be? Imagine if you put that much time into learning how to invest or day trade or, you know, trade meme coins or whatever the latest thing is. You know, if you went at it the way you went at the gym, you know, what could you unlock for yourself? So I just see it as, you know, it's something that I was naturally gifted for, which made me commit to it, and get far with it and learn a few things about it. And now it's kind of like just take that basic discipline. And I think that reality that you just have to work at something constantly, and it might not be perfect, like, and you'll make mistakes and you'll tread water a lot of the time, but you just have to kind of like doggedly go at it. One of the things I noticed with people who maybe haven't had success with getting into shape, they're very, very quick to sort of blame their genes, and they'll look at me and go, oh, you've got good genes. And that's probably true, but I wouldn't have the best genes. But the good genes aren't the propensity to build muscle so much as they are the propensity to complete a multi-decadal project where you never stop going to the gym, not once, not ever. And nobody who says to me they had trouble putting on size or they struggle with it has ever been able to go, oh yeah, here's my receipts. You know, here's the 10 years in a row I put in, never taking a break and trying to constantly record everything I did and optimize everything I did. So that's kind of the lesson I get from those things. Obviously, if you quit anything, you haven't got a hope. But you have to just be prepared to take the valleys and the peaks and just keep kind of like marching forward, and do whatever it is you can, and like with COVID kicking off, a lot of people have stopped going to the gym because they can't, but the diehards will scrap together bits of iron from Facebook Marketplace and buy up equipment at exorbitant prices, and they're doing whatever they can do to like put a workout together and preserve what they can. And like I rushed out and spent like, I think, 2 to 4 grand on some machines that I got at a gym going broke, so that I had equipment. And then out at the rig, like we got banned from using the camp gym because of COVID. So I'm basically like lifting bits of iron and equipment and tools around the rig I work on to have a workout, and just doing the best I can to stay big. And so, you listen to people make petty arguments about not having good equipment at their gym, and that's the reason they're not big. And you're maintaining your size with, rusty bits of pipe and just like really like ghetto workouts essentially, and doing everything you can do to make it happen. So I think when I look at that, it's like, take that attitude where dance in the rain. Yes, it's not optimal. Yes, everything's shut down. It's a very strange time in the world, but just hack together solutions. Like it's okay if it's not easy. It's okay if it's hard. Don't worry about it. Just plod along and take the next step, and just prepare yourself to put in a bit of time and a bit of hard work to get it done. And sometimes you got to drop your emotion out of it. Just be like, okay, for example, with the gym and the gym shutting down, it's like, okay, well, that sucks. I've never not had good facilities. But now I get to work 13-hour days, and I have to find like 10 minutes somewhere in the day to like work out at my work site, probably in a way that I'm not allowed to, just to preserve what I've got, and it's not ideal. I can't measure it the way I'm used to measuring it. But so far I've managed to hold a fair bit of size and condition, solving the problem as best I can. Just deal with it. It is what it is. People who just stop and use it as an excuse and a cope, they're not going to achieve what they want to achieve in life, because they're quitting at the first hurdle. And I think that's the wrong attitude. And I think that the right attitude is, when it gets really bad, like when those gyms shut in COVID, like I remember saying to myself, like, I'm going to solve this. I'm not going to stop. Everyone else is going to stop, and I'm going to find a way to keep advancing no matter what, with whatever is available to me and around me, and solve that problem. So I think, lifting weights has probably taught me to doggedly pursue things, and work around things, especially when they get hard. So if you're going into business, I think at the end of the day, like there's no easy formula. There's no book I can read on how to start a fledgling guitar manufacturing business in the face of multi-billion-dollar, multinational corporations that have everything going for them. You got to just go for it,
Yeah. Speaking of ideals there, so something that stops a lot of people is perfectionism. And, it's not the perfect conditions, and you talk about dancing in the rain. You've spoken to a lot of kind of your ability to persevere and to find a way around and create a solution. How has perfectionism, if at all, come up in your own kind of creative life?
I'm definitely a perfectionist when it comes to aesthetic things. Very picky. And I think the way to solve it is to realize that you can't make anything perfect at the first pass. And half the time you don't even know what you need to know at the first pass. And you just have to keep in your mind that all creative things are an iterative process, and the creative process and achieving perfection is about going through iterations as fast and furiously as possible, because that's how you learn and solve and incrementally improve things as you go forward. So it's fine to be a perfectionist, but you're better off just making errors and being slightly off the mark, and then just turning it over, getting that volume of creativity out there. Because at the end of the day, like trying to get perfection often destroys what you're working on. It's better off like getting it 90% of the way or 80% of the way, and then starting again on the next one and trying to miss all those mistakes you made on the last one. And usually you invent some new mistakes and then you try and miss them on the next one. I think that's the best way to go about it. So just remembering that the creative process is iterative. Aim to take lots of shots. Just keep taking shot after shot after shot and making little improvements. I think is the word Kaizen. Is that the buzzword? I think you could probably speak to that better than me. I remember that in some book, maybe a Tony Robbins book or something like that. But yeah, the idea is just to like get a little bit further at each pass, get a little bit better each time, because you can handle that. If you try to make perfection at the first pass, you'll just be frustrated with yourself and you'll stop and you'll just lock yourself up and you won't go anywhere. So I just see it as just destroy things and keep making them and destroy them and go again, and just figure it out as you go.
And the actual process of making mistakes, like how do you actually relate to that when they occur? Do you get frustrated and then you remind yourself, I know this is where I need to be? Like what actually takes place when you're really excited, you're trying something and then you fuck up?
Well, some guitars have hit the floor with assisted gravity and been split asunder in frustration, and then you just order another kit and you go again and make some new mistakes. So like I'm constantly making mistakes when I make these kits, but I'm really just trying to teach myself about things. And if anything, the main thing I've learned from just painting some of these kits together, I'm just building some kits to send to friends. So they're already existing models on the internet. You buy them, they're in pieces, paint them up, clear coat them, polish them up. And there's heaps of stuff you got to do that I make it sound really easy, but there's heaps of work embodied in them. But it's really just to kind of see what it's about. What can I learn? Yeah. Is this a good way to manufacture it? Is there a better way? And like, for example, like with the kits, because they're an already existing design and the woods are cheap, you will always color them, you'll always paint them, because that's the best way to take them from being like a cheap Chinese kit to something like special and attractive with a little bit of pop. But when it comes to designing my own guitars, I'm not really interested in painting that much, because I've seen how frustrating and how many things can go wrong trying to control a clean space for painting and things like that. So in my design for my original guitar, it's been about picking beautiful woods and showing off authentically the woods that the guitar is made out of. So they come from the tree in a beautiful color, and they'll just need to be stained up with some oil and then like coated in some lacquer. And that skips that whole frustration of like, say, the painting process, which can be it's very hard to get an even coat on a guitar, especially when I've just been using rattle cans and stuff. If I got a spray gun, I'd be able to get a lot closer. But even then, like, it's one of those things when I think about, okay, if I want to bring something to market, everything from how it looks to how it's put together, the whole process needs to be considered so that time isn't wasted, so that everything comes out looking good and consistent. And so I'm thinking about those designs in terms of like a more natural and considered product, in terms of getting pretty woods and nice tone woods, instead of relying on paint and glitter and features that are maybe a bit too garish, I guess. So like a good example is, this is the kit I've sort of finished at the moment, and it's quite beautiful.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And how I made all of that was I used this stuff, and it's not a product plug, but I use this stuff called unicorn spit, and it's basically like a gel-based stain. And you essentially get your guitar, you seal it, sand it, and then you put lines and marks all over with the different colors, spray a bit of water over the top, put a plastic sheet over it, and you kind of like push and blend and feather all the colors together. And I just looked at a little tutorial of someone doing it on the internet, did like 3 test runs, and then I did that. And it comes out looking like absolutely gorgeous.
Looks really good, yeah.
But there's all these sort of small ridges in the paint because of the way it dries, and it means you need to bog the clear coat with layer after layer after layer so that you can get high enough to level sand and make everything flat and glossy. So like if I was to make something like that as a product, although I might consider it, it's like you would need people or myself who understand how to do this kind of weird, creative, controlled chaos of a process. And I just don't know how I could ever really get the quality control I would want to maybe offer that as a consistent design. It's very much, it's like an art piece more than it is a product. And so one of the things I've loved about these kits is they've really shown me a lot of things that I don't want to do, because I know that achieving them in the future on a factory floor will cause more problems than they solve. And so in many ways, it kind of eliminates what you can do. It puts constraints on what you can do. So that might be a very beautiful, artistic looking guitar, but I might reserve it as like a special model where I make 3 of them a year and sell them for as much as I can, because it's a bit of a ball ache to get it to look as good as it does. And there's no way I could or maybe you could train someone up who could do it even better than you, or there could be a technical solution to do what I've done there in a way that is friendly in a factory, but probably not. So you sort of learn from the process of making mistakes, what direction you might want to take it.
Yeah, I love that. I really appreciate you sharing that as well, especially assisted gravity. And I think it's one thing to hear the sort of, in hindsight, this is how the creative process works, and and it's iterative. And I think that it's so easy to be flooded with what things look like in theory, and and actually there's so much chaos that goes on, and there's a lot of emotion that goes into it as well. And so although on one hand we know that it goes through ups and downs, and I just need to keep on pushing through, like if you're not willing to actually embrace the emotion and maybe break the guitar or ruin the picture, like that's all part of it. And I think that it's really important to kind of hear that actually takes place, rather than this kind of like, cool, collected, this is just the creative process, we just keep plowing through. And then, of course, you learn a ton too. But I think there's so much more emotion than I often hear in podcasts. It's like, oh yeah, this is the process. It's just go through all of this steps. It's very linear. And actually, when you come up against those challenges and hurdles, it can really be like, fuck, maybe I should kick the fucking thing down. And then at least at least I'm energetically in a different place. Yeah, definitely. Well, listen, I mean, anything else you would like to speak to? I feel like this has been a really cool kind of journey through lots of stuff that you've got going on. I guess maybe on the back of that, like the creative blocks that you do kind of come up against, I think creative blocks are a thing that stop a lot of people actually getting started in the first place or continuing. You've spoken a lot about how, in a way, you couldn't not do this, Actually, that might be an interesting one. Have you ever been in a time of your life where you weren't creating as such, and it really took its toll on you?
I think I've always had something I'm working on. Often when we say creative, we mean like the visual arts or music or something, fashion-wise. Sometimes you're working on a business or a side hustle, but like even when I was sort of doing the videos on working out on YouTube, I guess, which was like my first maybe public creative pursuit. I've always like been playing instruments and whatever in the background. Like I've always had that. And I always like to just improvise because it's just flow state. It's relaxing. The same reason kids play video games or anything else. It's just like you sit there kind of zoning out from the world and relaxing. But I think when I was making videos for YouTube, like I was shooting them with like a proper camera, and I was like, my goal here was not to make some crappy, shaky footage, but to present things properly framed, use a good camera, use a good microphone, use a tripod, set up the angles properly. And I used to sort of make a lot of decisions in the editing process and the filming process to make sure that I presented everything in a good way, framed myself in the shots properly. I'd put like overlays over everything to describe the exercise, the amount of reps, the cadence. And I'd think about the colors and the text and the font, and I would go like all the way down with making it visually appealing and having color pop. And like each season would kind of like have its own color, and I would, put that in that season of workouts. And I'd do like a voice overdub. So instead of explaining things as I'm working out, which would be kind of weird and distracting, I'd just film my workout. And then while I'm performing that set for a minute, I'm talking to the audience with an overdub, describing what I'm doing right, what I might have got wrong and should have done it this way. So I think I've always been kind of like highly considerate of how things are presented. I don't know if you call that creative or not. Like, I think it sort of is. Like, I think editing video and presenting video, you have to make creative decisions. But it's not chaos. It's just sort of controlling everything so that you can achieve whatever your goals or your aims are. And for me, that was just to properly communicate sound principles of exercise, and make sure it was packaged in such a way that it would be taken seriously. Because if it's just crappy shaking camera and you're ad-libbing your things as you're working out, it just makes for a mess, and you don't really get the point across. So much of creativity is really just like solving problems and being like forward thinking about what you're trying to achieve, and then making all those little small decisions that kind of like feed into the overall goal.
Yeah, lovely. Cool, Gary. Well, this has been great, man. Is there any way you want to sort of point people to, or leave a little cliffhanger of what to look out for?
Oh, I'm probably just going to be quiet about what I'm doing until it's done, if that makes sense. So cool. I haven't really, like, I used to do like online PT and help people out with that sort of stuff. And normally when I'm on a podcast, it'll be talking about exercise, and I'll usually be like plugging services or something like that. But because of the way I've been working, I don't really have time to take on people in that way. So I'm at that phase in my life where I'm just working on my projects. I'm in the bunker, and hopefully I emerge soon with something for people to be able to purchase and enjoy. So when that happens, when I have a couple of different beautiful guitars in a flash Instagram page, well, I might come back on and we can have another discussion and go through bringing everything to fruition and bringing things to market. And we can do the shameless plugging, and you can find me here, that kind of stuff there. But like, obviously I'm on Facebook, so if anyone's your friend and they want to add me and chat or whatever about anything that interests them that they might think I'm interested in, I'm always open for that. Just say I'm Nick's friend, and find me on Facebook and go from there.
Lovely. Brilliant, Gary. Well, that sounds great. And it's really cool. It's really cool to have had this conversation and to learn a little bit more about the whole guitar project, because that's been wicked. I've sort of seen, we've kept abreast of it a little bit over the time, but I wasn't sure how deep into it you've been. So yeah, really cool, man. Well, thank you very much, and I look forward to having you back in the future.
It's a pleasure.